Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping headfirst into the wildly unpredictable, literally overnight world of AI generation. I mean, just think about the absolute sheer volume of capital and attention flooding into this space right now. We're seeing generative collectives raise massive seed rounds based on nothing but prompts. Digital images are racking up millions of impressions in a matter of minutes. It's crazy. But it really forces us to stop and ask a pretty tough question. Are we genuinely innovating here, or are we just, as the source brilliantly puts it, painting with layers of nothing? It's a high-stakes, super fascinating topic that touches on art history, incredibly fragile economics, and just pure human psychology. So let's break it all down. To really grasp the reality of this market, you have to understand the absolute psychological whiplash it creates. It's intense. Picture this. You wake up to a viral AI masterpiece. The likes, the shares, that feeling of massive cultural relevance, it all skyrockets before you've even had your first sip of coffee. For a creator, it seriously feels like catching lightning in a bottle. But here's the catch. By the time your head hits the pillow that very same night, the novelty is totally gone. The algorithm has already shifted its gaze to 1,000 newer, shinier images, and that morning's so-called masterpiece is now seen as little more than a worthless piece of code. It's an exhausting, hyperspeed roller coaster that takes a lifetime of traditional artistic boom and bust and compresses it into a 12-hour window. So that extreme volatility brings up a vital debate, and we really need to unpack this neutrally today. Is this rapid AI art boom a legitimate, roaring success story of human ingenuity? Or, as some critics very strongly argue, is it just a completely artificial playground, a Disneyland for adults, if you will? I mean, sure, it looks magical. The lights are blindingly bright and the rides are super fast. But is there actually any real structural integrity holding the whole thing up? Or is it purely a manufactured illusion? To figure that out, let's look at the mechanics of this boom phase in Section 1, the overnight AI masterpiece. How exactly does something go from zero to culturally invaluable in a literal heartbeat? Well, the source points out three key factors here. First up, instant virality. These tools are basically engineered to hijack our scrolling habits, right? They create these eye-catching visuals perfectly designed to completely dominate a feed. Second, it's 100% algorithmic output. There's no physical human labor slowing things down. The production is instant. But the third concept, this is the kicker. It's what they call painting with layers of nothing. Think about it. Traditional art was built on layers of history, context, and agonizing physical effort. When you completely remove the physical canvas, the drawing time with the paint, the years of practice, and you generate something totally out of thin air, what are you actually valuing? Economically speaking, you're literally pricing a vacuum. And that glaring lack of fundamental structure brings us right to Section 2, a Disneyland for adults. Critics use this exact phrase because it just perfectly captures the whole manufactured vibe of the fantasy. Think about the actual Disneyland for a second. It's an unbelievable feat of engineering, but it's heavily optimized for hyperstimulation and instant gratification. Well, algorithms operate the exact same way. They're trained on millions of data points to figure out precisely what colors, what lighting, and what subjects will instantly trigger a dopamine spike in your brain. It's a space that completely prioritizes the initial gasp over the lingering gaze. The whole environment is built entirely to dazzle you in the moment, rather than offer any kind of enduring foundational value. And man, does this create some serious underlying tension in the broader art world. For centuries, the traditional market relied heavily on scarcity and physical labor to dictate price. A painting took months to complete, right? And there was only one original. But today, we're up against the sheer undeniable power of algorithms that can churn out infinite, hyper-polished variations in milliseconds. So how on earth do you price infinity? When human fundamentals, intentionality, physical effort, the happy little accidents of a brushstroke are suddenly stripped away, traditional economic pricing models just completely break down. The market literally doesn't know how to handle an endless, effortless supply of beauty. Which brings us straight to the big money question. Section 3, vibes-based economics. Okay, so if you take away scarcity and you take away physical fundamentals, how does anything get its massive perceived value? Well, welcome to the era of vibes-based economics. It's a super fragile financial system driven entirely by collective sentiment rather than, tangible assets or historical metrics. Let's think about how this actually plays out in real time. Today, platforms like Discord and X are basically acting as the central banks of this new economy. If the community's hyped up, boom, the value skyrockets. It's not about what the art is actually made of or its historical significance. It is entirely about the velocity of the crowd's enthusiasm at this exact second. It's literally a currency backed by nothing but fleeting attention. Now check out these seriously eerie parallels between the lead up to the 1929 Great Depression and today's AI market. The source material draws this brilliant conceptual comparison. The roaring 20s perfectly echoes today's AI roaring success, right? There's this super infectious, almost blind belief that the upward trend is simply never going to end. But the most dangerous parallel here is the reliance on borrowed capital. Back in the 1920s, people bought stocks using over-leveraged margin loans, gambling with money they flat out didn't have. Today, relentless social media hype functions exactly like a margin loan. We're basically borrowing future attention to prop up today's valuations. And just like the massive stock market speculation of the past, chasing digital phantoms today means that eventually, that borrowed attention has to be paid back. And when an entire ecosystem operates on borrowed hype rather than the solid fundamentals, we have to look at the precipice of a potential fallout. Let's explore Section 4, the terrifying crash. The trajectory of a bubble is historically super predictable. Just look at the life cycle we're seeing play out right now. Month 1, the roaring boom begins. Everyone's euphoric, the barrier to entry is basically zero, and fortunes seem so easily made. By month 6, the market is completely leveraging those margin loans of hype. Creators are just churning out massive volumes of content, desperately trying to maintain the community's vibe just to keep the perceived value afloat. But why does the source pinpoint the 1-year mark as the moment the terrifying crash looms? Because human attention is ultimately finite. Eventually, the euphoria just runs out. The collective attention span shifts to a new shiny object. The algorithmic feeds recalibrate, and suddenly, that hype loan comes due. In this scenario, the source drops a really stark warning. Paper fortunes simply vanish. Poof, gone. But we gotta ask, who actually gets hurt when this happens? Spoiler alert, it's rarely the massive tech conglomerates selling the computing power. No, it's the everyday users. It's the early adopters and the digital collectors who bought into the hype at the very top, totally believing the vibes would last forever. When the music finally stops, all that immense intangible wealth tied up in algorithmic generation just evaporates overnight. Because the assets were built on layers of nothing, they return to nothing just as quickly, leaving regular people holding the bag on a literally worthless piece of code. It's a huge, sobering reminder of what happens when perceived value violently outpaces actual utility. So ultimately, this leaves us to consider one final, really vital question. Take a second to genuinely think about the trajectory we're on here. In our massive rush to embrace algorithmic perfection, in our absolute desperation to build this fast-paced, high-output digital Disneyland, has the art world simply tripped over its own shoelaces? Are we moving so incredibly fast in pursuit of digital phantoms that we've completely forgotten how to walk on solid ground? It's definitely something to seriously chew on the next time a viral AI masterpiece pops up on your feed. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep questioning what you see.